All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Clark Sikcheski. I am the U.S. Natural Resources Industry Leader for BDO. For those of you who don't know BDO, we are an accounting, tax, and advisory firm with offices in 80 locations across the U.S., as well as in 160 countries, including Denver. So it's my pleasure to introduce NCS Multistage. NCS Multistage is a leading provider of highly engineered products and support services that enable oil and gas operators to optimize oil and natural gas well completions and field development strategies. They provide products and services primarily to exploration and production companies for use in onshore wells. Predominantly wells that have been drilled with horizontal laterals in unconventional oil and natural gas formations. Their products and services are utilized in oil and natural gas basins throughout North America and in selected international markets, including Argentina, China, the Middle East, and the North Sea. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Ryan Hummer.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Clark. Pleasure to be here at EnerCom today. Appreciate the opportunity to present. Lawyer statements here on the disclaimer. Read that very quickly, please. And really want to give an introduction to our company, and I'm going to frame my comments today really in terms of the company's long-term strategy. So NCS broadly, we're an oil field services and equipment company, really leveraging technology development. And what we think we are very good at is fast innovation on behalf of our customers. So the process of understanding the voice of the customer, understanding where there are pain points in the field, where we can deliver value, taking that information, assessing it through our product line team, getting that through engineering, and quickly coming up with a solution that will help a customer either improve the efficiency of their operations, save them money, or both. Within this, we have a very strong focus on R&D. We've got a technology center in Calgary where we have over 20 engineers who are completely dedicated to the continuous improvement of our technology and the development of our portfolio over time. We maintain a capital light model, so we invest in R&D. What we don't invest in really is hard assets. We have limited in-house manufacturing capacity. We've intentionally been capital light where we'll work with outsourced machine shops in the Houston area and the Calgary area to build our tools. We'll oversee the QC as they come in. We'll oversee the assembly, and we'll get them out to the well site. But we don't have big investments in manufacturing capacity, CNCs or lathes. We also don't have big investments in field technology, so we don't have coiled tubing units, wireline units, or any large capital expenditures required for our business. With respect to the company's strategy and where we expect to go over the next 3 to 5 years, there are really 3 core components to it. The first is leveraging our core strengths. So as you'll see later, we're a leader in completions in the Canadian market. Approximately 30% of the completions in any given year utilize NCS's technology. There's a very strong sales and operations team in Canada that we're leveraging to bring additional products and services to market there. We also believe ourselves to be the worldwide leader in what we call the fracturing systems product line for NCS. We're taking that institutional knowledge, our track record over the years, and taking that technology out of North America into the North Sea and to other markets. The second core piece of our strategy is to leverage our presence in international markets as well. So international is about 5% of our revenue today. We think that can grow to 10-15% over time, and I'll get into why that's important for us. Finally, we want to make sure that we continue to innovate and bring new products to market. With that, we will continue to generate the value that we, the margins we would deserve from the technology and the benefits that we bring to our customers. So the first and our largest product line is fracturing systems, and within that, what we enable is pinpoint stimulation, and I'll get into how we do this in just a second. But what we allow the customer to do is place a fracturing sleeve and initiate a fracture exactly where they want along their lateral. They're completing these stages one at a time. It's not what you would see in a plug and perf completion where you may have a 200-foot stage but have 10 entry points, and each entry point getting a variable amount of fluid and proppant. With our technology, you can place exactly the amount of fluid and proppant where you want along the lateral. And we do this by placing what you see at the top of this page, sliding sleeves. These are installed with the casing as the casing's being run to the toe. And again, the customer will choose to place these sleeves exactly where they want to initiate a fracture in the well bore. When it's time to complete the well, we'll send one of our service technicians out to the well with the tool that you see at the bottom of the slide. And what we do with this slide is we'll find the sleeves in the well bore, we'll isolate the packer there and create pressure isolation from the well below, shift the sleeve open, and as the sleeve opens, that's when the fluid and proppant enter the formation exactly where the customer wants to. On the right here, you'll see the applications for the system. And initially, when we came up with our sliding sleeve technology, really the impetus was to help the customer, again, put exactly the amount of fluid and proppant where they wanted to in the well bore. But we've developed the technology over time really into more of a downhole flow control type of portfolio. So in many cases, what a customer will do, they'll open the sleeve, place the fracture treatment, and actually close the sleeve immediately after. That lets the formation heal, and the proppant gets embedded in the formation. It doesn't flow back into the lateral. So we can help a customer avoid a wellbore clean out through the use of this technology. Over time, we've also developed versions of our sliding sleeve system which are multi-position. So if a customer has a view that they want to take a field and turn it into a water flood later in their life, we have a position where you can fracture through the sleeve, produce through the sleeve, come in later and shift the sleeve into an injection mode where you can control the injection across the lateral and get better sweep efficiencies. We've recently deployed this technology with a customer who is looking to understand the capacity of their reservoir to store CO2. So looking at carbon capture, sequestration operations. And again, understanding the barriers and helping to be as efficient as possible in understanding the zones where they can place the CO2 and understand the efficiency of the cap rock to keep it in the formation. A few years ago, we introduced this technology into the offshore market in the North Sea. We've worked with a customer named Aker BP in the Norwegian side of the North Sea for several years. Last year, started working with a large customer on the UK side of the North Sea. And just this year, this quarter actually, have installed and are moving towards fracturing operations for a third customer, which is operating on the Norwegian side of the North Sea. And the benefits that this brings to the customers in offshore applications is really a tremendous time and cost savings versus traditional completion methodologies. And when you think about an offshore operation, you're saving that customer the rig time, service vessel time, the amount of benefit that they get from a cost savings by using an efficient completion system far outweighs the additional expense that they would have in utilizing our technology. With this, we are also in a development program with a customer to take this technology and utilize it in deep water applications. So thus far, most of what we've done offshore has been off of a platform in shallow water. But we believe that we can install this, and we would use drill pipe as opposed to coiled tubing as the mechanism for our tool, but use our completion system in deep water applications. And what that'll help customers do is target zones, additional zones below where they're currently producing today. So this would be an extension of the lower completion in deep water applications. Our second largest product line is one called Repeat Precision. So this is a joint venture. We own 50% of the joint venture. We consolidate it for financial purposes because we have control aspects in the company. And this is really our play on the plug and perf market in the US. So while the fracturing systems product line has a large market share in Canada and emerging applications internationally, the US is 99%, if not more, plug and perf from a completion standpoint. And this is our way to participate and benefit in the plug and perf market. We initially entered through this joint venture, entered into the composite plug space. We're currently a top 5 provider of composite plugs in the market. We've continued to move up the tool string there. We've introduced setting tools to pair with the composite plugs and recently introduced perforating gun technology as well. So we can provide effectively the entire completion string that gets utilized in a plug and perf completion. With this, we've got some additional product developments underway. On the plug side, we've recently introduced a plug which has something called a misrun contingency device, which is something that certain operators want to utilize to mitigate the potential disruption. If you have guns downhole that don't fire, you can efficiently pull the tool string out and run back in. And then we're moving towards some other technology around this joint venture as well. I'd mentioned earlier leveraging our strengths as a company. One of those strengths is our market position in Canada. We do believe that about 25 or 30% of the wells in Canada get completed using plug and perf technology, and our sales team has been very successful in introducing these repeat precision products into the Canadian market. We think we're the number 2 or 3 provider of composite plugs in Canada today. We've not yet introduced the perforating gun technology into Canada, but we plan to do that over the course of the next year or two. The third product line for us that I'll speak to is tracer diagnostics. This is a business that we acquired in 2017. We provide both chemical tracers and radioactive tracers. Really kind of what they are is not necessarily the most important piece on the tracer diagnostics. It's really what the customers do with the information that they get from a tracer study. And I like the illustration here on the right because it shows 2 potential applications. One that's a very high value add application that would be used in specific projects, and one which is an application which can be used in every single well in a customer's program. So what you see on the right are 5 individual laterals that have been traced using NCS tracer diagnostics technology. On the outside wells, you'll see that the little nodules represent effectively a stage in that well that has been traced, and they're all individually color-coded. So in this case, on those outside wells, the customer has just traced the toe of the well. So for this application, what the customer really wants to know is my entire lateral producing. So once my entire lateral is producing, I can get the well off of flow back and turn it on to sales. Alternatively, what they may look to do, they may have a clean out program in these wells where they would routinely go in and clean each well before putting it on production. If you do a simple, low-cost tracer diagnostic study, just pump the tracer in the toe, you may find that you're getting flow from the toe and that clean out isn't required. You can save a couple $100,000 as a customer by doing so. But the more interesting and the more value-added approach and the way that we can help our customers improve their operations is through what you see at the middle set of wells, where we're pumping unique tracers across each stage that the customer has put into a given well. And we've pumped those tracers, but we're taking the samples back from every well on the pad. And with that, we can see if a unique tracer that was pumped into well number 2, for example, is showing up in well number 1 or well number 3. That gives a way to validate that you're seeing fracture interference between the wells. So with this information and other diagnostic techniques, the customer can then think about how they space their wells in a given DSU, and they can make really multi-million-dollar development decisions that are informed in part by the tracer design. So this is a common application as customers are moving into new areas, as they acquire new acreage, as you're running low on tier 1 inventory and you want to start developing tier 2, you want to understand the rock better, understand your asset better. So we see some of these more sophisticated tracer studies done with customers that are exploring new areas. Finally, the 4th product line we have is well construction. The key product for us here is something called a casing buoyancy tool. And simply put, if you think about some of the presentations from the E&P companies over the course of the conference, a lot of them are improving their capital efficiency by drilling ever longer and longer laterals. I think of the casing buoyancy sub that we sell as really an insurance policy to ensure that they can get that lateral to where they want to. And it has the added benefit of saving cost and saving time from the casing running and the casing running process generally. So it's a pretty simple tool. If you think about the profile of a well that might have a 15,000-foot lateral, you're drilling 1.5 miles down, 3 miles out. And as you're running that casing to bottom, that casing is laying on the low side of the well, encountering friction, and you're trying to push it all the way out. With this technology, what we're doing is effectively creating a way to fill the casing with air so that it becomes buoyant in the fluid that gets utilized as you're landing that casing. So you're reducing friction, you're able to land that casing faster, and again, the product pays for itself by saving time running casing on location. We pair that proprietary technology with a few other proprietary pieces within the well construction portfolio. We have our own toe sleeves, our own liner hangers, and we'll look to get the entire well construction package for a customer and bring in third-party equipment as well to do that, so third-party centralizers and other equipment. So, the portfolio of the business, as I said before, 65-70% of our business tends to be from the fracturing systems product line. That's our biggest area of strength. Talked about the 30% market share we have there in Canada and the emerging opportunity internationally. The rest of the business is 10 to 15% across the other product lines. Within and moving into kind of the recent financial performance, and we'll talk to some of the long-term financial performance in a minute. I don't want to dive too deep into Q2. It's in the past. But one thing you'll see on the right is the improvement in our gross margin between 2022 year-to-date period and the 2023 year-to-date period. So we implemented some price increases with our customers in the second half of last year. We continue to go after price increases. They're increasingly harder to get as activity has been flat to down in the North American market in the last few quarters. But we're benefiting from those price increases. The other piece of this is if you look at the picture we saw earlier of the sleeves that we sell, those are built from casing, built from steel. We're starting to see some relief in steel pricing as well, which should help to bring down our costs and allow us to continue to grow that margin over time. With respect to the full year, really at the bottom of the slide, and we'll hit on this a bit again later, expecting total revenue at the midpoint, it's I think 167.5, so about 7-8% growth year over year, and at the midpoint, adjusted EBITDA of $20 million. I mentioned that we're a capital-light business, so to generate that adjusted EBITDA, we only need about $2 to $3 million of capital. Very little of that is maintenance capital. I'd say most of that is dedicated to specific projects that we have to support the growth in the business that we expect over time. So looking at a mix, business is about 2/3 Canada, given that market share that we have in fracturing systems there, and we think that's actually a good thing and a strength, and I'll hit on that in a minute. 5% international and about 30% US. In time, we think we can grow that international piece of the wedge from 5% to 10 to 15%, given some of the specific initiatives that we have in the North Sea and the Middle East specifically. And we benefit in that because the international markets tend to be more technology-driven and technical-driven as opposed to just cost-driven, as you see in the North American land sector. We get spec'd into those opportunities. A lot of time, we've created specific products for our customers, and therefore can generate a better margin profile with respect to that international activity. From a product and service mix, 70% of the revenue, more or less, is through product sales. The remainder is the service. We generate the service revenue when we have the people on location for the fracturing systems business and also when we're providing the tracer diagnostic studies. So with respect to Canada, this is an energy conference, so don't need to dwell on trends in the rig count. But what I will point out is when you look at activity in 22 versus 2019, the last pre-pandemic year, right, the US rig count was down about 20% from 850 to 650. The Canadian rig count, on the other hand, grew from 130 to 173. So the Canadian market's growing, and it's growing at a faster rate coming out of the pandemic than the US. What we've seen in the first half of 2023 is while the US rig count is down another 15% or so, the Canadian rig count across the first half of the year is basically up 0 to 5% from last year. Q3 is a little bit lower than last year at this point, but still think the activity in Canada will outpace the activity in the US, which is good for us given our weighting there. And we think this is durable as well. So within Canada, there are 2 large infrastructure projects coming on, one that will support oil activity, one that will support gas activity. So the TMX pipeline is increasing export capacity within Canada to the West Coast. That will help the Canadian producers improve their netbacks. And then you have LNG Canada. So just as you have the LNG build-out taking place in the Gulf Coast in the US with a lot of capacity coming on late 24 into 25, you have LNG Canada, which should ramp up in late 2024, let's conservatively say early 2025. So a lot of the proponents of that facility, Shell, Petronas, and a few others, will need to ramp their dry gas production to start serving that facility, which should drive incremental activity in the Canadian market going forward. With respect to NCS, this is a bit of a busy slide, but just want to put a couple of things in context here. The first is just looking at, again, the revenue profile and what we're expecting this year. We're expecting revenue growth of about $12 million, but we're expecting EBITDA growth of about $5 million. So very attractive incremental EBITDA margins with that growth. Part of it, again, because we're getting better gross profit margins this year, and our SG&A is a relatively fixed cost. We don't need to grow SG&A to grow the business at this point. So you see good flow through of the incremental gross profit to the EBITDA line. The other piece is on the bottom right. You can see that over the course of the last 5 years, we've generated about $50 million of free cash flow across that period. 2018 and 2022 were only free cash flow negative because of relatively large investments in net working capital. In each of those years, we invested about $12 million in net working capital. So, pulling it together on this slide and looking, primarily on the right side at this point, we're a relatively small cap company, right? $43 million market cap, $56 million enterprise value. But when I think about that in the context of a company that's going to generate 20 million of EBITDA this year, 2.5 million at the midpoint of CapEx, relatively low multiple. And also when you think about our net working capital is $56 million, our equity value is much less than the working capital. So big margin of safety in the business. So we think that there's a significant opportunity for us to continue to grow and put those incremental margins to the bottom line and have outsized profit growth over the next few years and benefit from potential multiple upswing as well. So I think there's some real good opportunity within the NCS equity, and to the extent anyone wants to have conversations in the breakout session, I'd be happy to do it. All right.